Cops assaulted Chuck Norris in a parking lot, but what happened next sent shockwaves through the entire precinct. Stay with us till the end to uncover the full story. Don't forget to subscribe, share this video, and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. The desert night stretched out like an endless canvas of deep indigo, speckled with stars. The heat from the day still clung to the cracked asphalt, and the air carried the dry scent of sage and dust. A buzzing neon sign cast a tired yellow glow over the empty parking lot. It read, "Sonny's Diner," letters flickering like they were struggling to stay alive. The only soundtrack was the quiet chirping of cicadas, a soft pulse in the silence of the desert's eternal heartbeat. Inside, the diner smelled of coffee and fried food. The jukebox in the corner was silent. Empty booths sat quietly under amber lights. Behind the counter, a slow-turning ceiling fan creaked with each rotation. Sam, the owner and cashier, a grizzled man with tired eyes, wiped down a stained glass with a cloth far past its prime. His focus was on the flickering TV above the register. The local news murmured in the background. Another stolen car reported in the Silver Creek district, possibly tied to the recent string of highway thefts along Route 89. But Sam barely paid attention. That kind of trouble was routine out here. People passed through, and sometimes they brought their shadows with them. At the far end of the counter sat a man, still, silent, and unshakable. Chuck Norris. His face was calm, carved with experience. Broad shoulders, steady hands, faint scars on his knuckles, the marks of 1,000 battles. He wore a worn denim shirt and faded jeans. Before him, a half-finished cup of black coffee quietly steamed. The news continued. Travelers are advised to use caution on Highway 89. If you see anything suspicious, contact local authorities. Chuck glanced at the screen for a moment, but his face didn't change. He wasn't the kind of man to be rattled by warnings. Trouble didn't scare him, it usually found him. He placed a few bills on the counter, more than enough for the coffee and a generous tip. "Safe travels, friend," Sam said. Chuck gave a small nod and stood up. His boots tapped softly against the floor as he walked out. The bell above the door jingled. Outside, the parking lot was still. His old Ford F-150 waited under the dim light of a lone street lamp, weathered but loyal, a partner to miles of hard roads. Something about the night had changed. The cicadas had stopped. The wind carried a strange scent, hot rubber and oil. Chuck's trained eyes caught something off, a vehicle parked just outside the lot, its headlights off, hidden in the shadows. But it wasn't empty. Someone was inside, watching. He didn't slow down. His steps stayed even, boots crunching over gravel. But every sense was on high alert, tracking the shape of the car, the darkened windows, the pressure in the air. As he reached his truck, hand brushing the door handle, a voice cut through the night. "Step away from the vehicle." Suddenly, red and blue lights exploded around him. A police cruiser skidded to a stop, blocking his path. "Hands where we can see them, now." Doors slammed open. 2 officers emerged. The first, tall, broad, face tight with aggression, had one hand resting near his weapon and the posture of a man who didn't ask questions. He gave orders and expected fear. The second, younger, wiry, looked more unsure. His hand hovered near his holster, but his eyes betrayed uncertainty. He kept glancing between his partner and Chuck. The older cop barked again. "On the ground. Hands behind your head." And Chuck didn't move. Chuck remained perfectly still, hands at his sides, palms open. His voice, when it finally came, was low and steady, the kind of calm that rolls in just before a storm breaks. "I don't know what you think is going on here," he said, "but that's my truck." The younger cop glanced at the license plate and back at Chuck, something uncertain flickering in his eyes. But the older officer didn't budge. He stepped forward, flicking the strap off his holster. "Last warning. On the ground." Chuck didn't move, but his body was ready. Coiled. Alert. Every fiber of his being reading the moment, the twitch in their fingers, the tension in their posture, the unmistakable scent of a setup. This wasn't a routine stop. This was something else entirely. The air, once just dry desert heat, now felt heavy, not with temperature, but with intent. The red and blue strobes pulsed across the cracked pavement, painting the lot in shifting hues. The cruiser's low engine hum filled the silence like a predator growling in the dark. But the real question was, who was the predator? The older officer stepped forward with calculated weight. His boots hit the asphalt like a challenge. His name tag read Travis. His jaw was locked, his expression a mask of dominance. He didn't just wear authority, he claimed it. Behind him, the younger officer followed, more hesitant, less sure. His name badge read Carver. He kept glancing between his partner and Chuck like he was caught in the middle of a test he wasn't ready to take. Then came the bark. Hands behind your head. Now. Chuck's stance didn't change. Hands open. Calm. Ready. His gaze locked with Travis's, the stare of a man who'd stood in front of much worse and never blinked. Travis was the kind of cop who expected people to flinch. Chuck didn't flinch. "That's my truck," Chuck said again, his voice unwavering. "I've got my ID and registration inside. Let's not turn this into something it doesn't have to be." Carver hesitated. He looked at the plate again, then to Chuck, then to Travis. Doubt was starting to seep in. But Travis didn't care. "You match the description of a stolen vehicle tonight. Same make. Same model." His words were sharp, but his body language was sharper, tense, aggressive, itching for a reason. "You either do what you're told, or we make you." Chuck's jaw clenched slightly. His instincts, forged in 1,000 dangerous moments, were screaming. This wasn't about law. This was about power. "Check the plates," Chuck said, not backing down. "You'll see. It's mine." But Travis wasn't interested in the plates. He was interested in escalation. Then it happened fast. A blur of motion. A sharp whistle of air. The steel baton sliced toward Chuck's shoulder, a precise disabling strike meant to drop him. But it didn't. Chuck moved like lightning before the thunder. The baton missed and slammed into the hood of the truck with a loud metallic clang. And then, Chuck's left hand shot up, clamping around Travis's wrist like a steel trap. Bones shifted under the pressure. Travis's eyes widened, not just in pain, but in sudden clarity. He hadn't cornered a civilian. He'd just provoked a force of nature. In one clean motion, Chuck twisted, fluid, powerful, and the baton spun out of Travis's grip, skittering across the pavement. The officer stumbled forward, thrown off by his own momentum. Chuck moved again, locking his arm in place with surgical precision. Travis hit the ground hard, his knee smacking the asphalt, a guttural growl of pain tearing from his throat. "Let him go," someone yelled. Suddenly, crack, the sharp pop of a taser firing split the night. But Chuck was already moving. The barbed prongs missed by inches, sparking against the truck's metal door in a brief burst of blue electricity. Carver stood a few feet away, taser trembling in his hands, his face frozen in disbelief. "Get down." "Now," he shouted again. But his voice was cracking. And his hands were shaking. Carver's hands were trembling. His breathing came fast and shallow. There was no authority behind his command, only fear. And Chuck saw it. For just a moment, their eyes locked. Carver didn't have the cold edge of Travis. No cruelty. No hunger for control. Just confusion. Uncertainty. A kid in over his head. Chuck saw the truth flicker behind those young, wide eyes. Carver didn't want this. Not like this. Then, from the ground, Travis spat up with venom, his voice a knife in the dark. "Shoot him, you idiot." Carver flinched, the command rattling him, the weight of it pressing against his spine. His finger twitched on the taser's trigger. But Chuck moved first. Not with rage. Not with aggression. With precision. A single, fluid motion, his boot caught the fallen taser leads and kicked them aside. In the same breath, his other leg swept through the loose gravel. A soft scrape. Carver's balance broke. His knee gave. His breath caught. And then, thud, the pavement rushed up to meet him. The taser skittered from his hands as he hit the ground, wind knocked out of him. And just like that, the lot fell still again. Hot with silence. 2 officers down, but breathing. Conscious. Untouched beyond necessity. Chuck stood over them. Calm. Controlled. He had used no more force than required. He hadn't come to fight. But he was built for it if need be. On the asphalt, Travis seethed, voice a toxic hiss through clenched teeth. "You're dead, you son of a..." But before he could finish, the night answered. Sirens. Low. Distant. Growing louder. Wailing like wolves on the hunt. The backup had arrived. Flashing strobes pierced the darkness. Tires shrieked. Doors flew open. Officers surged in, weapons drawn, commands sharp and cutting through the desert heat. Freeze! Hands up! But Chuck was already still. His stance was calm. His hands relaxed and open. His breath steady. He didn't move. Didn't speak. He didn't need to. Because the truth was about to speak for him. The commanding officer stepped out of the nearest cruiser, his presence shifting the energy like gravity. His badge read Briggs, and the way the others reacted said everything. This was the man who earned authority. He scanned the scene. The scattered taser. The baton. The dented truck. 2 of his officers on the ground. His voice came like a scalpel, cold and exact. Travis. Carver. What the hell happened here? Travis scrambled up, his face twisted with rage and humiliation. This son of a, he attacked us. We were bringing him in for a stolen truck. But before the lie could land, Carver spoke. Broken voice. Heavy breath. But truth cut through like a flood smashing through a dam. That's not true. He coughed. Travis attacked him first. No warning. No reason. A vein pulsed in Travis's temple. His fists clenched. You little. But Briggs didn't flinch. His stare cut into Travis like wire. Is that true? And before the answer could come, the radio on a nearby cruiser crackled to life. Dispatch to all units, suspect in Silver Creek vehicle theft has been apprehended on Route 92. Vehicle confirmed. Black F-150. Plate matches reported stolen. Repeat, suspect in custody. Silence. Thick. Suffocating. The truth dropped like a hammer. The truck, Chuck's truck, the one Travis tried to seize with violence, had never been the one they were looking for. Chuck had been innocent the entire time. Briggs's jaw set like stone. His voice was low, but deadly. Travis, explain yourself. But Travis didn't. His lips pressed into a hard, white line. His eyes burned, not just with anger, but something deeper. Something darker. His gaze flicked to Chuck. And something shifted. A decision. Suddenly, he moved. Metal flashed. A reckless draw, a last, desperate act. His sidearm came free. The barrel swung up. Eyes full of venom. Of a man who refused to lose. But before the trigger could break, Chuck moved. Not a lunge. Not a strike. An inevitability. His arm snapped forward with perfect timing. His palm struck Travis's wrist, precise as a hammer to a nail. The gun fired, a single shot. The shot cracked like thunder, shattering the silence, but the bullet found no target, slicing harmlessly into the empty desert sky. The gun spun from Travis's grip, landing with a clatter on the pavement. Travis roared, fury overtaking reason, and lunged, a blind, desperate swing. But blind fury has only one end, emptiness. Chuck sidestepped, smooth as water. Travis's punch cut through nothing but the night air. And then, with a sharp pivot, Chuck's arm locked under Travis's, using his own momentum to drive him into the ground. The asphalt met Travis's body with a brutal finality. The breath was knocked out of him in one violent gasp. And suddenly, everything went quiet. Travis lay there, chest heaving, staring up at the night sky, the same sky that had just denied him victory. The man who came full of rage, power, and pride now lay bound to the cold, cracked earth. Then came the click, sharp and absolute. Handcuffs. Briggs stood over him, his voice low and final, not triumphant, not angry, just judgment cast in stone. Travis, you're under arrest. Assault with a deadly weapon. Reckless endangerment. Abuse of power. His stare didn't flinch as it met Travis's burning glare. You're done. Travis's lip curled. A venomous whisper escaped him. You don't know what you're doing. But Briggs said nothing. He didn't need to. Because the law, for once, was quiet, but absolute. As Travis was pulled to his feet, cuffed and defeated, Carver stood frozen. Hands trembling. Face pale. And eyes haunted. His voice, when it came, was cracked, small under the weight of guilt. I didn't stop him. He swallowed hard. I didn't. Briggs turned to him, eyes still sharp, but something flickered behind them. Recognition. You made the right choice tonight. His words were rough. Not comforting. But honest. The battleground of the night slowly emptied of its rage. The chaos had passed, leaving only the silence that follows a storm, when the wind is gone, and all that's left is debris. Chuck stood apart. Not triumphant. Not broken. Just still. His breath even. His face unreadable. Because justice, when it finally comes, never feels like victory. It feels like survival. Briggs turned back to him, voice steady. You all right? Chuck's reply was simple, withered. I've been worse. Briggs followed his gaze to the bullet hole in the pavement. Could have been worse. There was no apology. No ceremony. Just the weight of what almost happened, hanging heavy in the dry desert air. The sirens had faded. The shouting was gone. Only the wind remained, carrying the echoes of what this night had tried to become, and failed. Because in the end, what stood wasn't peace. It wasn't revenge. It was truth. A truth that no badge, no uniform, and no bullet could bury. The red and blue lights flashed slower now, as if exhausted. Engines idled. Radios crackled. The chaos had dulled to a hum. Captain Walter Briggs stood silent, taking it all in, the shattered pieces of power misused, of loyalty broken, and a man who had done nothing but stand his ground. Somebody start talking, Briggs growled, voice cutting through the tension like a blade. Travis, still cuffed, still seething, jerked forward. This bastard jumped us, he barked. We caught him in a stolen truck, he resisted, he assaulted us. But the lie never landed. Carver spoke, his voice thin, shaking, but clear. That's not true. His words hit like a bolt of lightning, and the night froze once again. Travis went after him without warning. No reason. No cause. He just attacked him. Briggs stared at him, sharp, dissecting. You're telling me Travis initiated force? Carver swallowed, chest rising and falling. But his answer didn't shake. Yes, sir. He did. Then he pulled his weapon. And fired. The air grew thick again. Every officer present knew what those words meant. There was no walking them back. Briggs's eyes swung back to Travis. Cold. Unforgiving. Is that true? Travis's face twisted into something between rage and desperation. A sneer. A man who had already lost, still trying to claw his way back. But there was nowhere left to run. The punk's covering for him, Travis spat, jerking his head at Chuck. You think this guy's some saint? He jumped us. Took me down like a goddamn soldier. What does that tell you? Briggs didn't blink. His jaw tightened. His voice dropped low, slicing through the last layers of Travis's control like a razor. Tells me you couldn't handle him. That landed like a punch. Stripped of his story, his control, and his authority, Travis was left with nothing but the snarling mask of pride and hate. And then, like the final nail in the coffin, the police radio crackled again. Dispatch to all units, suspect in Silver Creek theft now in custody. Vehicle is a black F-150. License plate matches. Repeat, suspect in custody, Route 92. Over. The words hit like a hammer. Whatever thread Travis had been clinging to snapped. The lie he'd built this whole night on, the excuse he wrapped around his violence like a shield, turned to ash in the air. Briggs's eyes narrowed, voice dipping into a tone that was all blade and no mercy. So, he said coldly, we've got the real car thief in custody. He stepped forward. Which means you just assaulted an innocent man. Beat. Without cause. Without warning. Travis's breath hissed between his teeth. Save it. Briggs barked. The words cracked like gunfire. Silence swallowed the lot again. Only the hum of radios remained, distant and eerie. Briggs reached up slowly, unclipping the mic from his shoulder. Dispatch, this is Captain Briggs. Officer Travis is being detained. Charges pending. I want internal affairs on this scene immediately. Copy that, Captain. Travis's body went stiff, eyes blazing. You're making a mistake, Briggs, he spat. You don't know what you're walking into. Briggs didn't blink. Didn't even breathe heavy. His voice was granite. No, Travis. You made the mistake. And you just walked yourself into it. But then Travis's tone shifted, colder now. Deadlier. He wasn't yelling anymore. He was smiling. You think this is over, he said, voice smooth and venomous. You think you're cleaning house? His eyes slid to Carver, dark and knowing. You're fools. Both of you. There's more dirt under these floors than you'll ever sweep out. Briggs's face didn't move, but behind the eyes, something flickered. Something that looked a little too much like recognition. Are you threatening me? Travis shook his head. Just telling you the truth. There's a rot in these walls. You think you're cutting out the sickness? His voice dropped. You're standing on the tumor. The silence that followed was colder than the desert wind. Briggs's jaw worked, slow, deliberate. Then came the final command. Get him out of my sight. The other officers moved in, faces unreadable, shoulders tense. Travis didn't fight it. He didn't need to. The words he'd left behind were already doing the damage. The cuffs clicked. The car door slammed shut. And the echo of it rang deep, not just in the lot, but somewhere further. Briggs turned to Carver. The younger officer stood stiff, pale, like someone who had just seen the world tilt sideways. You did the right thing, Briggs said. No fluff. No comfort. Just truth. Carver's voice was barely there. It doesn't feel like it. Briggs nodded slowly. That's how you know it was. Then he turned to the one man who had stayed silent through it all. The one who had never needed to speak. Chuck Norris. Their eyes met, not with apology, not with regret. Men like them didn't trade apologies. They traded in weight. In presence. In truth. You all right? Briggs asked. Chuck's voice, when it came, was quiet. Steady. I've been through worse. But they both knew. This wasn't about pain. This was about what almost happened. About the bullet that missed. About the rot that had just peeked through the surface. Briggs's face hardened. His voice dropped, no longer for the officers, but just for Chuck. I'm going to get to the bottom of this. Beat. And if there's more to find. His jaw flexed. I'll burn it out. Chuck nodded, eyes unwavering. Then you'd better dig deep. The desert wind picked up, dry and hot, swirling dust through the fading glow of patrol lights. The sirens had gone quiet. The red and blue lights now pulsed soft and slow, like the last heartbeat of something that refused to die. But in that stillness, something shifted. Something deep beneath the concrete, beneath the uniforms, beneath the system itself, began to come loose. The night wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Narrator voice outro for YouTube video. Chuck Norris didn't seek this fight. But when justice fails to see clearly, the truth stands its ground. If you believe the system needs more men like Briggs, more courage like Carver's, and more strength like Chuck's, share this story. Subscribe for more. And tell us in the comments. Have you ever seen the truth almost get buried? Because sometimes it only takes one moment to stop the whole system from rotting further. And this was that moment. Collecting evidence and logging damage reports couldn't mask the feeling in the air. It wasn't just smoke and scorched rubber anymore, it was the smell of war. Captain Walter Briggs stood still in the chaos, arms crossed, jaw tight, the fire behind him burning less than the one now inside him. The explosion had taken out half the garage, and with it, the illusion that anything in his department was still under control. This wasn't cleanup. This was a purge. And the message had been received. His radio crackled, half buried in soot. But the voice that slid through the static wasn't one of his own. Captain Briggs. The voice was smooth, calm, and laced with poison. That was your warning shot. Briggs gripped the radio tighter, knuckles bone white. Who is this? He growled. Someone who gave you a chance to stay in line. But since you didn't, a soft laugh followed, cold and surgical. Let's see how you like it when the line moves through you. The signal cut. The air thickened. Briggs lowered the radio slowly. His eyes lifted to the flames, the shattered glass, the twisted metal, and finally, to the man standing next to him. Chuck Norris. Unshaken. Unmoved. But fully locked in. The fire flickered in Chuck's reflection, but his voice came low and clear. You were right, Captain. It's deep. Briggs nodded once, jaw flexing hard. His voice, when it came, was more than a vow. It was a declaration of war. Then we burned through. And in the heart of the fire, with the night pressing in from all sides, something unbreakable rose between them. Not hate. Not fear. Resolve. Because the darkness had come. But it had no idea what was about to step out of it. Narrator voice outro for YouTube video. If you've made it this far, you already know, this story is just beginning. Corruption runs deep, but not deeper than courage. Subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter. Share this video with someone who believes in justice, even when it fights from the shadows. And drop a comment, what would you do if the system turned against you? Because sometimes, the system doesn't need reform. It needs a reckoning. And Captain Briggs just lit the match. Check out our next video. The conspiracy only gets darker from here.